Merry Christmas, everybody! Happy Hanukkah! I hope you all are having a wonderful holiday season. Today, we are, of course, uploading this video on Christmas Day, and I don't want to keep you from your families for too long, so we're going to keep things relatively short. Today, I want to make a quick video talking about things that we take for granted. Oftentimes, it's the stuff that we utilize on a daily basis, stuff that we use the most frequently. Those are the things that we often appreciate the least. Because we use them on such a daily basis and because we're so exposed to them, we eventually take them for granted and oftentimes don't give them the appreciation that they really do deserve. When it comes to video games, I think it's the maps that we play on that often aren't appreciated enough until after we move on from the games. From my own personal experience, Halo 2 was the big multiplayer game I spent most of my time playing as a kid. Maps like Lockout, Zanzibar, Ivory Tower, Blood Gulch, and Elongation would be where I spent most of my days after school. It's pretty interesting to me that as a kid, I felt like these maps were perfect game design and that Team Slayer couldn't be played on a better layout. As time went on, later Halo installments, of course, would replace these maps with newer ones, introducing new ideas as the old ideas faded from memory. That is until Halo Reach was released with the expansive Forge mode. This Forge mode included remakes for many of these old classic maps, where if there wasn't already a version of your favorite map out there, you could always make it yourself. Playing them on Reach was a bit of fun for a while, but it wasn't anywhere close to the same experience I had before in Halo 2. Lockout isn't Lockout without the snowy, cold atmosphere. It's not just the game design of the map being this great dynamic place for gameplay to occur, but the aesthetic itself is almost more important. It's funny how I have fond memories for certain maps, even for games that I personally hated playing. Like Modern Warfare 2 is a good example of a game that many people look back on with rose-tinted goggles. When this game first came out, it was considered by a lot of people to be something that was just kind of a pop video game. It wasn't for the real hardcore gamers. If you were a serious gamer, you were playing Halo or Gears of War. Only teenagers and little kids played Modern Warfare. Well, I was one of those teenagers, and I spent a fair amount of time on MW2, and it was a game that I mostly did not enjoy. I just kind of played it because other kids at school were playing it. I mean, when all your friends had it and spent every hour after school grinding prestiges, you naturally wanted to join in on the fun, and while I did have some fun playing lobbies with friends, I never really got the same sort of joy that I would have with other games like Halo. In particular, I remember having all sorts of irate feelings whenever we played on the map Rust. That was a map that was so small that action happened all the time. Anytime I turned a corner or exited a corridor, I would just get shot from some guy that I had no idea where he was even supposed to be or how I was supposed to play against him, just getting spawn killed over and over. I got so mad every time we played on that map because I would do so poorly, but even that's a map that I have fond memories getting angry on. As many fond memories as you may have with a particular map though, a lot of the joy that came from playing these games came from the fact that you had all of these different maps. I mean, Halo 2's Lockout was a great map. Some people may consider it perfect, but if all you could do was play Slayer on Lockout, people would quit playing the multiplayer after 5 hours or something, and never pick the game up again probably. Hell, I would have quit Modern Warfare 2 even faster if all you could ever do was play on Rust. Usually the multiple maps in games like these are used to keep the multiplayer feeling fresh. Everyone would have a different set of maps that were their favorite alongside a different set of maps that they despised. One group of people may love playing on Ascension while another group can't stand it. The jumping around playing fields elongated the length that a player could spend grinding multiple games without getting a feeling of burnout, and it's insane to think of limiting yourself to only one map, but that's exactly what we do in League. League of Legends has Summoner's Rift. One map, and it probably won't ever get another new one as long as the game lives. In 2010, shortly after League's original release, Riot was already teasing the new Twisted Treeline map at the World Cyber Games. They were running these commercials trying to give League a distinction from the other Dota-style games. This game wasn't just the usual 5v5 nonsense. This game had a 3v3 mode too, an entirely different map with a new way to play competitively. But of course, we all know how that went. The original Twisted Treeline had a player base that shrunk so quickly that eventually Riot had to give a complete overhaul and rework to the map, trying to introduce new game mechanics to entice players back into playing it. But that didn't work, and here we are at the end of Season 9, Riot has removed Twisted Treeline from the game for good. And oh, we can't forget about Dominion either. I mean, I know there's some players who probably started playing League after Dominion was already removed, but Dominion was another great example of an entirely new map as well as a new game mode that tried to freshen up League in the same sort of way that Twisted Treeline tried to. The map was called the Crystal Scar. It was fast, it was fun, but before long, it was gone. The game itself was played similarly to how territory-style modes work in other genres. Your goal was to capture and hold these different areas on the map, holding them, giving you points that you score, where once you reach a certain number of points, then you win. It sounded fun, and it was for a little while, but eventually, people just stopped playing it. It should be said, this was not something that failed because Riot didn't put effort into supporting it and trying to make it work. For a certain period of time, every Champion Spotlight video included Dominion strategy alongside the Summoner's Rift gameplay. But no matter how many resources Riot threw into supporting this game mode, it couldn't get a player base to stick with it for a serious period of time. It really is incredible to think about, but Summoner's Rift is about as close to perfect as a video game map can be. Christmas time and the holidays always bring up feelings of nostalgia for me, since I'm reminded of the old skins that Riot used to put on it. In 2010, there was a spooky skin that was given to the map during the spooky season, and then a snowy map that was given in the holiday season with a partial tie-in to the Winter Olympics. Eventually, this map stopped getting added to the game every winter though, since players claimed it was a strain on their eyes and made gameplay more difficult. Riot has changed Summoner's Rift a number of times over the years, firstly smoothing everything out through a series of visual updates to make the game a bit more modern and less cartoony. They also eventually brought back a few thematic Summoner's Rift versions with tweaks here and there, as well as a way to disable it if it's a little bit too much for your eyes. Although what may have been more drastic were some of the gameplay updates introduced. In recent years, Riot has been adjusting the brushes, the jungle creeps, the terrain, and adding plants, as well as some of the biggest changes we've seen in the Season 10 preseason, which added the alcoves on the outside of the lanes, as well as elemental drakes that will completely change the terrain of the map based on the elemental drake summoned. It seems to me as though Riot has been working hard on trying to change the map just enough to make sure that players don't get bored of the terrain that they're playing League of Legends on, but honestly, I can't help but think Summoner's Rift is perfect. It's the kind of map that you don't even think about appreciating because you just get so used to how it is, but it really is a genius bit of game design. The map is mirrored to make things as fair as possible no matter which side you start off on, but the players' roles aren't mirrored, they're just flipped. This means that if you're playing top lane blue side, your jungler has a different series of paths that they'll need to take to get to your lane compared to the jungler on pink side if either one wants to come and gank you. The same is true for bot lane, which means that both junglers and laners in the outer lanes have to be aware of different things depending on which side they're playing on, but even with these differences, it still feels perfectly balanced. The size of the map is also something people don't often take into consideration. It's perfectly sized. It's big enough that there's diverse jungle routes for players to take, different options for someone walking from one side to another, but it's still small enough that it doesn't feel like it takes ages to get from one lane to another. If you want to take the risk of leaving your lane to go and gank an ally's lane, the distance is just short enough to make the trip feel quick and worth it, but just long enough to punish you if you make the trek for no good reason. I also personally love the number of walls that there are and the different sizes in them. The fact that there's some terrain that you can jump over with small dashes, while other terrain that you can't realistically clear with anything is really interesting. This makes team fights in jungle even more dynamic, considering almost every champion has some sort of dash or ability that will interact with these walls differently. A small Nidalee Pounce, for example, might be able to clear some walls but not others, while virtually everybody has a flash that can clear most small and medium-sized walls, whereas Whereas other champions like Bard may have entire abilities dedicated to interacting with walls. With Bard, it's kind of the opposite when you're taking his magical journey. You want to have as long of a wall or as long of terrain as possible so you can have a really long magical journey that if opponents try and follow you through, it will take a long time for them. There's a lot of little details like this that we stop thinking about after a certain period of time. We just get so used to the map after thousands upon thousands of games that yeah, the map is the way it is because that's just the way it is. But if there's anything we can take away from Dominion and Twisted Treeline and the countless other MOBA-style games that were created trying to take some of the player base and some of the success from League, a map is not guaranteed to be successful. Just because you have 3 lanes in a jungle, that doesn't mean that it's going to be an amazing, perfect experience that can keep an audience invested for years upon years without ever getting bored of it. Summoner's Rift is something that is unique. It is really perfect, or about as perfect as a video game map can be, and I think there's always some time we can take to maybe appreciate that. This is the season of spending time with family and friends and being close with people that you're often so close to that you take them for granted. You take the connections and relationships you have with them for granted. And if we're going to be doing that with our families and friends and whatnot, why not do it for League of Legends as well? So I hope you guys all enjoyed watching this fun little history video talking about Summoner's Rift. I will see you all in our next video tomorrow. But until then, thank you very much for watching. Good luck in solo queue and have a wonderful day.